This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Welcome to Uncorking a Story, the podcast that introduces you to the rich world of storytellers who share their personal journeys, creative processes, and the stories behind their stories, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Mike Carlon, and I'm thrilled to be part of your writing journey. If you're an aspiring writer, a literary enthusiast, or simply someone who believes in the transformative power of words, you've come to the right place. Every week, we'll pop the cork on the world of successful storytellers and give you a healthy pour of inspiration, insight, and empowerment. My mission is to help writers like you realize your full potential through the transformative and therapeutic power of writing. Whether you're just starting your literary voyage or looking to refine your craft, I'm here to provide you with the knowledge, inspiration, and encouragement you need to embark on your own storytelling adventure. So, are you ready to uncork your story and let your creativity flow? Uncorking a Story is about to begin. Sit back, relax, and let the transformative magic of storytelling whisk you away. Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Laura Essay attended the University of Nebraska and obtained a law degree from Creighton University School of Law. When her three grown children moved on to graduate programs in other cities, writing became her passion. She joins me today on Uncorking a Story to discuss her debut novel, Side Effects Are Minimal. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Laura.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Laura, I'm excited to have you here and lots to chat about. But the first thing I want to get a sense of is, where does your story as an author begin?
My story as an author begins as far back as my memory goes. I have always, from sneaking into the closet when I was little to write poems and write little rhymes that I could come up with, to throughout elementary, high school, law school, I just have always had a passion for writing, but I never really put myself into it to the extent I have now. And it really is a part of me.
Where do you suppose that passion came from? You know, I've heard other writers tell me that they spent part of their childhood literally hiding in a closet to write
We don't do that.
versus doing other things. Why is that?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, I believe it. I don't know where it comes from inside, but I believe if you are in an environment that allows that to happen, it nurtures it. Like athletic desires, if you're in an environment that you have to run or you have to do these things just because it's right there in front of you, then you kind of adapt to it. If you're in an environment that allows you to sneak away or you have a lot of downtime, I think people are having less and less downtime, but I think that is what allows you to find out that this is in you. And I had a great grandfather who was a writer, and he taught how to write at a university more than fiction. He was not a fiction novelist, but I would watch him and I always wanted to be like Pa. I dedicated my debut to him because he was an inspiration. And he always said, just show up and the book will write itself. Just be there. And I think if you're in an environment that allows you to be there, you find that that's in you.
Yeah, that's so cool that you had a grandfather that was a writer.
A great grandfather. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
amazing.
that's neat. You know, where did you grow up?
I grew up I was born in Indiana. I grew up with my young days in North Carolina, and then I moved to Pennsylvania, outside Philadelphia, Pottstown, and then I moved to Nebraska my senior year of high school, of all times to move.
Oh my gosh, that is a hard time to move. What were the circumstances around that?
My father opened up a manufacturing company, and it was going to gear towards farm equipment, and so we went from Philadelphia to Beatrice, Nebraska. I have to say, I came kicking and screaming, hating every minute, as a typical 17-year-old girl would do, but they were kind and wonderful. They welcomed me. They made me everything. So it turned out to be quite a good experience. They're
So
wonderful.
pretty, so it's a smoother transition perhaps than you were anticipating.
Oh, much smoother, much.
So you're 17. You're in a new environment for your senior year. You start adjusting well because of the open arms of your new friends.
Exactly.
I'm curious, what did you want to be at that point in time when you're thinking about, you know, perhaps going on to college after high school? What were you thinking about becoming?
Well, I wanted to be a writer, but that doesn't pay your bills. That's that. And at that point, I mean, that's a hobby. You're not going to go to school to do that. So I took English courses and writing courses and things like that, but I needed a profession. And so I went to law school. And
Got
that
it.
would allow me the writing, but then it could, do its job, pay the bills.
What was your very practical decision making process there? What was your field of law?
I was assistant attorney general in the state of Nebraska.
Just kind of throwing that around casually, assistant attorney general, state of Nebraska.
I never thought it was appellate criminal, and I loved it. I always felt like I was on the right side and I was doing the right thing, and it motivated me. And law gives you some level of writing, not fiction, of course, but I was still using skills that I really valued. And so I did that for a while.
I've done, I think you're number 365 episodes of this show, and I
Wow.
have to say, more than 5 to 10% of the people I've had sitting on the other side of my screen have been lawyers who have decided at some point in time that either that they wanted to stop practicing law, or that in addition to practicing law, they would like to start doing something in fiction writing. So I'm curious, when did that light bulb go off in your head?
It was always probably when there was time. I mean, I was very focused on my family. I have 3 children, and I was doing all the things I felt were right by them. And then they were going on to their lives and careers. And I thought, all right, now's the time. I've got to take this a little more seriously because I can do that right now. And this was not as my first debut that was published. It wasn't the first thing I've written, but I started just writing more and just showing up and seeing what happens. And then it just flourished from there.
Tell me about some of those earlier manuscripts, because you mentioned that your debut isn't the first thing that you've written. What were some of the earlier things that you wrote, and what did you learn from those experiences? Having not published them, but what were your big takeaways from those experiences?
They were along the same line. I think from being an attorney, I'm very factually focused. It's not a fantasy. It's not a made up. It's based on true events. I needed the facts, and then I could wrap the fiction around the facts, and they needed to be important to our society and to people. They needed to be relevant. I think a lot of that came from being assistant attorney general and being tied to society in a very relevant, important way. I wanted my creativity to come out, but I needed it to be wrapped around something that was important and relevant. And then in the process, you you trim down some areas. You learn that because editors will look at that and there's too much of this or that. But then I think it helped a lot just being an attorney, because briefs and memorandums are very factual. There were places where I needed to warm the characters up. In my manuscript, Claire was not very likable. The characters are about the, I've always used my characters. I love them. I know them now. But she was not all that likable. And I had editors say, well, she's kind of sounds like a bag a little bit. We need to like her a little more. I was like, okay. And so those sorts of things, I had to warm up the characters, or I had to make them a little tougher, funnier, more ironic. I had to work with character development more.
Fair enough. Well, you just mentioned Claire, and I don't know who Claire is yet, but what can you share with us about your debut? Side effects are minimal.
Side effects are minimal. It's based what I should. It's not based on one true story, because there are so many times what occurs in my story happens. My story happens all the time, repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly. And the ending, which is somewhat of a surprise, is the way opioids are going now. That happens more often, and that's what nobody's talking about. People are talking about the opioid crisis and the illicit drugs that are coming in, and the fentanyl and the deaths, and we have those statistics we're working with. But then at the end, mine takes a turn that is happening more and more, and we're not talking about that. And I don't want to say what that is, but that's kind of under the rug still, and that is of vital importance. And Claire, I hate to say fun, but the enticing thing about this manuscript is that there are other things on the opioid crisis. They revolve around and are focused on the addict. Mine's not focused on the addict. The addict is dead. That's not a spoiler. The addict is gone. It's around you and me, the situation, the pharmaceutical industry, the physicians, the parents, the family, what's left behind in this tragic episode that happens every single day, repeatedly, every day. People are going through exactly what I write about, but it's about it's about the you and the me. It's about what we're going to do with it. And what part do we play? We all do. And we want to pretend it doesn't affect us or it's not right outside our door. It's right there. And you have no idea when you're going to open the door and boom, there it is. And that every day.
What prompted you to, write about this topic and just sort of spend a while crafting a whole story around it?
I was curious because it's everywhere. It's on the news, it's in the newspapers. You hear of stories of this, that, and the other. And I just thought, how big is it? Is it just propaganda? A lot of times, news reports, it's just making a big story out of something that's, kind of big, but not that big. And who does it affect? We drive down the street, we look down the alley, and they're the drug addicts. So it's kind of them, and it's a story about them. But as I started to research, I got sucked down the rabbit hole. I had no idea how big this was. I had no idea how much it would grip me. That over 80% of the people you see in the alley, over 80% of them, they were you and me. They were the CEOs of this company or that company, and soccer moms and dads. And they had a situation where they were put on an opioid, and now they're in the alley, and now they're on heroin. And that, again, that happens every day. I had no idea how big it was. But the counterbalance of that is that opioids are a very important drug with a very important purpose. When they're used correctly, they are needed. They're an advancement in medicine that is wonderful that we have. But when they're not used, that's what the story focuses on, and that balance. And what role do we all play in that? Because we all do play a role.
So many things have come about the opioid crisis in recent years. I'm thinking just in scrolling through Netflix or Hulu, any of the streaming services, you can find any number of documentaries or
Dramatizations.
dramatizations. That's the word I'm looking for. Dramatizations of companies like Purdue Pharma, and which is one that is very close to home for us, for me, because I live in their hometown. So they were based in Stamford, Connecticut. I've had client meetings in that building, not with them, but with other firms in that space. And it's hard to walk in there and not feel like you're walking into something that's slightly evil. So there's it is in especially where I live, it is in the news quite often. And of course, we do know people who have been addicted to opioids and oxy, and had to turn to illicit drugs when they couldn't get
Right.
prescriptions anymore. Um, so I imagine that it's not an easy thing to write about either, is it?
No, it's difficult because, as I said, it's closer than we all realize. I was at a baby shower for my daughter-in-law, and I was just talking to an older woman, 70-ish, and she had hip surgery, and she decided she was going to do it with her best friend from high school or whatever. So they both went in to have their hip surgeries, and she starts crying. And I said, her hip surgery didn't go as well as yours. Is that? She said, no, her hip surgery was fine. She took pain medications and then she kept taking her pain medications, and she became addicted and she overdosed and she's dead. And I was like, oh my gosh. And that's the thing. I'm at a shower, I'm at a fun event, and there it hit me. And if you ask around, if you ask at work, a few people here or there, everybody, there's a chapter in there. It's closer than 6 degrees. The Kevin Bacon thing, it's way closer. It's like more like 3 degrees. We are all affected by it. And I think that it's an important book. You would get to know the characters. You like Claire, you don't. And then there's some other issues. There's some love interest in there. There's some competition between some females. I mean, there's some storylines that it's not all drugs that make it kind of fun to read. And you like some characters, and then you want some to win and not win and that sort of thing. But I think it opens up the whole situation that we can start the conversation. Where do you stand with this? Where do you stand with this? What's our next step? What do we do? And I think that is important, that we just acknowledge, and we don't think of it as an us and them. It's an us and us. And as soon as we see that it's us and us, then we can all, take a stand on what are we going to do?
A lot of the people who listen to the show are writers and aspiring writers themselves. So I'm curious, what was your writing process like for this? How long did it take you? When did you make the time to write? And just, yeah, if you could just share what your overall process was, that'd be great.
I I started with research, and then as I got more into the research, it became a bigger issue. And I thought, all right, I can write a story about this. So I started to write the story, and then I did more research, and they kind of meshed together. And as I got more excited about it, I made time. I had all the things we all have our day to day, but I made time for this because I had to. And I would, I remember waking up in the morning one day and I was like, damn, Dana, I had no idea yesterday when I was writing she was going to do this. And it came to me when I was sleeping. I had to get up and start writing about it. I had no idea what she was going to do. And so I was that enthusiastic about it. And if you just, I am old fashioned that pen and paper, because my computer is where I search the web, I pay my bills, I check my email, I do so many things that they can and pop-ups. They can distract me. They can do all, put that away. And I just went to where I had my research with me and I would start writing this. And then I could get to know the characters just where I was. Not because then a news article came up on my computer. You know how things always pop up. You can't have that. I couldn't have that. So but I think as you get into it, you're more enthusiastic about what you're finding and it starts coming to you. It was just like Paul said, it started coming to me. I had no idea what some of these characters were going to do. I had to find out. And then I wrote about it.
It's almost like you were channeling the story somehow.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it just happens if you just get away from all the commotion. You have to have depend on, again, mine was factually based. And so I needed the research. I mean, mine's hugely, that's all it is, all factually based. And it's all true that you need that. But if it's a fantasy or if it's something, completely created, just get all the distractions away. And as you get into it and more excited about it, you find the time.
How long did it take you from start to finish, from the
Oh
time
my
you
goodness.
started to the time you submitted your first manuscript or first
Years.
draft? Yeah.
It was a couple years because again of the research, because it started one way and then as I discovered more and more, then that took me down another path. And then this took me down another path. And then I kept discover and it's different now than when my book was published. When it went to press, it's different now with I got a document and information from the CDC that the cartel, there's two main cartels, they are now infiltrating the pharmaceutical companies unknowingly and the physicians' offices. So if you go and pick up your allergy medicine, it can look like your Allegra. That's not prescription anymore, but whatever. It can look like that, but it's laced with fentanyl. Came right from your doctor's office. That has not happened where I live, but that has happened in the United States. They've gotten to the medicines that are in our safe zones. That's not anywhere in my book because that wasn't happening at the time. That's a new thing, but it's taking all new turns and continually changing.
How did you go from turning this into a manuscript to getting it published? What was your process there? Did you go the sort of the traditional route where you're querying agents? Did you go a hybrid publishing route? How did you approach it?
I tried the traditional. I sent uh, queries out and whatnot, little nibbles, but not I had no offer. I had nothing. But I suggest, because I've talked with a couple other authors trying to get published, go to writers' conferences. Writers' conferences where I met Brooke, who owns She Writes Press, and it's a hybrid. And I love the hybrid method. So, I mean, I just love that. But again, they had to accept it. That just like I had to query them, they had to accept it, and then they decided to publish it. Um, but I met her at a writers' conference, and I'm going to a couple more this next year. I think that is the best place to network. Like any job, you need to network. You need to know the people in the industry, and you're going to find someone, whether it's an agent, whether it's a publisher, another writer who knows an agent, another writer who's going through what you're going through, another writer who got published, and this is what they did. A writers' conference is the best place, I think, to meet people and to get your career moving.
Some people might be, asking themselves, who've explored hybrid publishing. They know that there is an investment required on part of the author. Will I make my investment back? Thinking about it in like business
Mhm.
terms. Was that a concern for you at all? And if so, how did you determine, that this would be the right way to go for you?
It was a concern, but self-publishing was not in my wheelhouse. It's so much work, and I don't know the industry. I wouldn't know where to get me. I wouldn't know what do you do? And so that was not an option. With traditional publishing, they your royalties are less. And so you're not going to get, I mean, I had a friend who was traditionally published, and I think she got 5%, and you are up more towards the 40s with hybrid. You have to put money up front, but that was not as big of a cost as marketing. Marketing is expensive, and ads are expensive, and trying to get your name out there, that's expensive. And you have that with any way you go. Because she said with her traditional publisher, they handed that to her. Authors need to market themselves, need to get themselves out there. And again, that's where if you go to writers' conferences and you meet people who know, Fawzia Burke is the one who set up this. I had a publicist. She set up our discussion today. I wouldn't have known you. I wouldn't have known that this exists without having having to find you and search for you and know, oh, this is where I would want to be. It's so much work if you self-publish, and you still have a lot of that when you traditional. If I had had a traditional offer, I would have said yes. I mean, I just would have. I didn't know. Now, with my second manuscript, I'll probably go back to She Writes Press because they've been wonderful. And I love the whole process. And we'll see how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly disruptive in the industry, and I do think that traditional publishers are they're feeling the heat. They're being extremely selective on who they take on as authors, and a lot of that is because hybrid publishing is a big threat to them.
Right.
And the value,
It's just workable.
yeah, the value proposition is there for authors who can afford it, who can afford that cash outlay up front. But on the flip side, they're getting their work out there, and they're getting some value for that money in the sense of distribution, covers, editorial services, maybe a little bit of advertising and promotion. I would imagine not much, but
But
uh,
some.
but a
Well,
little
that's
bit.
the thing. Because I've had people, who've said, well, but I can't do that. I have to self-publish because I don't have any money. You have to pay the print costs. You have to pay to have your cover done. You have to, it's so expensive to self-publish that hybrid seemed better to me because you put some upfront, a couple thousand. I mean, not, I'm not taking tens of thousands of dollars, but you pay some upfront that you're hoping to get on the back end if it's successful. They did my cover. They did. I mean, they do so much. The printing costs, you split those, but I didn't know what printer would I go to? What printer, who's good and who's bad? And you can fall into all sorts of problems with your self-publishing that I'm a huge advocate of hybrid publishing, and She Writes Press is wonderful. They have been, like I said, they set up today, and I'm so thankful.
And the other thing is for those who self-publish, you can do print on demand and not
Mhm.
have any cash outlay, but it will come out of your royalties, and then you're pricing your book at a price point that's so much higher than other books on the market. So it does make it sort of to the buyer, to the eventual reader, the pricing gets a little wonky for them. You're paying $13.99 for a paperback. and
Yeah.
the author at the end of the day is getting maybe $1 of that through the traditional model. So,
And
well,
then they have to,
not the traditional model, the self-publishing model.
and how do people know it's out there?
Yeah, that's
I mean,
it's
that is the biggest thing I've run into, is just letting people know it's there and seeing it outside of my network.
so it does sound like there's a book two in the works. I'm curious, what did you learn from going through this process that you're taking into that second book?
I think I'm just focused right now on it's this characters, the same character. It's a sequel, and I'm just focused on them and what their next step is and what the next case is. And I'm just excited about getting that on the paper. And then where I go after I get that down, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see what happens with it. I don't know because I don't even know I have a rough idea. I know what the problem is going to be, but I have no idea what they're going to do and what's going to happen with it yet.
All right. Well, I'm sure you'll have fun finding that out.
Oh, yes, I love it.
I'm curious, Laura. I always like to get to know my guests a little bit better at the end of our conversations by asking a couple of pop culture questions. And I'm curious, when you were growing up, what were some of your favorite things to watch on TV? Did you have any favorite TV shows as a kid?
MASH.
Oh, what'd you
I
like
like
about MASH?
um that they were on the edge. They were in a war. They were there, but yet they still kept their humor. They still kept their connection with society in the way they could and their camaraderie with each other. And it was lighthearted in a very serious situation.
I remember watching the final episode of MASH, which was a big deal in it was 1983 maybe. It was the top rated show like ever. You know,
Oh,
it was up against the Super Bowl, right? I mean, everybody in the country watched
I
it.
yes, I remember as you're saying that. I do remember that, but I can't didn't Hawk no, it wasn't Hawkeye. We lost someone in the last episode.
I can't remember. I know
Was it Hawkeye?
no, it wasn't Hawkeye. He went on to After MASH.
But there was his buddy, his sidekick.
BJ Honeycutt, maybe. I don't know. I remember in one of the season enders, a colonel, a helicopter went down, but I don't think that was a series ender. But yeah, I could be wrong. It's been a while.
I know. I seriously, we're like trying to bring it back.
But I do remember that that particular final episode, just the event it was, because my grandfather was a doctor. He was a surgeon in World War II, so he was part of the invasion of Normandy, and he was
Oh my
forced
goodness.
to perform. He was captured by the Germans and forced to perform surgery on wounded Nazi officers at gunpoint. And he did a
Oh.
good job because they let him go. But he loved MASH. He just loved that whole just because it was, I guess pretty close to home.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm surprised though. I mean, it's nice to know that because I was a little kid, but that he liked it, knowing that whole part of the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How about music? What did you like listening to when you're growing up?
Oh goodness. I don't know if I should even say this. Okay, my favorite singer was Rod Stewart
Yeah.
because he sang. Now this is funny. My husband would just die that I'm telling this, but I'm going to tell it anyway. He sang the song "You're in My Heart, You're in My Soul," and I knew when I was in junior high. I'm lying in bed looking at the snow fall out the window. I thought that I'm going to marry that whoever that song's about. I'm going to marry that person. I know that was who I was going to marry. So all through high school, whoever I dated, never would I think of them during that song because that would wreck it. That was my song. I was going to have some boyfriend wreck the song. No, no. So I am in college now, and I worked in my father's automotive factory in the summer. I'm working the needle loader, and the song comes on. And I was dating my husband at the time, but I thought, no, I can't think this is my song. This is no one else's. There's a line in there that says, "Your essay and glamour." Please pardon the grammar. Your essay. His name is in the song. I'm like, oh my gosh, seriously. That is funny. You have to admit that is funny. His name was in, and I knew, I mean, that was my song, but I had no idea he was in there the whole time.
No, that's a wonderful story, and there's no shame in loving Rod Stewart. I loved him all the way back from the Faces to his
Oh
solo
yeah,
stuff, and man, he's great.
he was
Still
an
is great.
artist.
Yeah, at my bachelor party in New York City, we went bar hopping after dinner, and there was a Rod Stewart impersonator in this bar on the east side of Manhattan. And I mean, my friend who had a little bit too much to enjoy that night was relentless to this poor guy, and I actually felt so bad for him.
I bet he was good though,
But he wasn't performing. He was just hanging out in the bar as a Rod Stewart
as
impersonator.
Rod
Like he wasn't
Stewart. Oh,
singing. There was no karaoke. It was just like
just him. He was just there.
this dude hanging out with his like big mane of hair.
Oh,
It's
funny,
pretty
funny,
funny.
funny.
Pretty funny. If you could go back in time and whisper some words of advice to that young Laura, maybe it's that young Laura who is, hiding in the closet doing some writing. What would you tell your younger self? What kind of advice would you give your younger self?
Well, it's all going to be okay. Just hang in there. I don't know. I want to say something profound. And like I was troubled and I would let me know, you know what, you can do, but I knew I could. I don't know. Isn't that an
Yeah.
awful answer? I'm so sorry.
No, it's not an awful answer, but just saying it's all going to be okay is a pretty powerful answer in my estimation.
Yeah, because I mean, I had a dysfunctional, we'll say, childhood. And so not ever, not knowing and all of, you're just scared. You're scared. Yeah. Just don't be scared. It's going to be okay. Yeah, that's what I would tell me. You don't need to be scared because I was scared a bunch. Yeah, that's what I would say. All right, you brought it out. Now I know that answer.
There we go. Now the next time somebody asks you, you've got something prepared.
Exactly.
Do you think you could have written, because you wanted to be a writer when you were younger, but do you think you could have written something like this? I mean, obviously the topic is more of a current event, but do you think you could have written a story like this when you were younger, or did you need time to sort of mature and experience life before it could come out of you?
Definitely needed time. I was focused on too many other things. I was focused on my career. I was focused on, I was focused on college. I was focused on, law school. I was focused on my career. I was focused on my kids. I had so many things going on that I would have had this, I would have played with it too much and I would have wrecked it. I would not have been able to dive into it and put everything else aside like I could now. And I've thought that before. I thought, I don't think I could have written this. I don't know what I could have written. Well, I did. I mean, I was a grant writer for the Arbor Day Foundation. I was a grant writer for Manzanita School District. I was a lawyer. And so I did that right. So I did a lot of writing. And again, grant writing was very cut and dry and I could do that. But to really dive into a manuscript of this caliber, I couldn't have done that when I had so much going on in my younger days. And I didn't know so much.
So how would you turn that, your experience and just that reflection into some words of advice for an aspiring author? Somebody who's looking to, get to their debut novel. What would you tell them?
Turn off your computer, get a pad of paper and a pen, and go somewhere and see what happens. Whatever comes to you, just if something will come to you and just write it down. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't need to be connected to the next thing that comes to you. Just start. And if you are you don't like, if it was my younger days and I had done that, I would have written something. And again, like I said, I did grant writing and got grant proposals, was successful with that. So just do something to write, to hone your skill a little bit and see what happens. Because you have no idea when you take all our busyness away, what's there. And you'll find something. And then go back to it later and see, oh, this is what I did. And then maybe you can do something with that. And then maybe see something else. And I would just say, turn off technology and let it come to you and see what happens. That has to be the start.
Well, Laura, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm curious, where can people learn more about you?
LauraEssay.com.
And are you active on any
That's
social media platforms?
I'm a face. Oh, that is so fun. Go to my Facebook page. Yes, my Facebook page is crazy fun because side effects is side effects are minimal as traveling the United States. And they were down in Naples when the hurricane just came, when Milton came, and I had pictures on there and we couldn't do anything with it. Stupid Milton. And so it's just the book and Milton. And now the book, I think the book is on its way to DC and the book is going to be at the Capitol. And the book has been in Iowa and Nebraska, and was in Colorado. It was up in the mountains in Colorado. And it's just fun to see where's the book going to be tomorrow or next week. So I am on Facebook, and so is Side Effects Are Minimal. It's traveling our country.
I was going to say, it sounds like the book is on tour, but you don't seem to be on tour.
Well, I mean, a little bit because I was in Colorado, although the book went to Vegas without me. And that was somebody else. Other people will chime in. They will have their book and they will show where their book is on my Facebook page. And it's just fun. It's a fun place to go. And you'll get to know me on a personal level, a fun level, and you'll see where my book is. And you'll want to read this because you will learn so much and you will love knowing. I mean, people have come away from this saying they were so thankful that they had no idea, but it's fun. You're going to know the characters and then you'll get to see where it goes next. And maybe you'll be somewhere. All right, you need to buy my book, read it, and then wherever you are, show us where it is.
Well, I'll bring it to a Rod Stewart concert. I might be seeing him by the end of the year, so we'll see.
There we go.
Very good. Laura, thank you so much for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlon uncork a new story.